Welcome to another episode of Storytime with BDD. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad. Folks, if you've ever heard the phrase love for all, hatred for none, that was created by my guest today as part of the Muslims for Peace campaign. My guest today is many things. He's an immigrant from Pakistan who arrived here with his family in 1987. Right, let me just get my visual up here. Boom. He is also a law school graduate. And I think he may be an athlete or a runner of some sort, or at least he was in at least one marathon. We'll find out. But he also ran for office. You see what I did there? He also ran for Virginia's state Senate and 1st Congressional District. And although he did not win office, he has not stopped reaching out to Americans for understanding, healing, and service. He's written 3 books. He's written 3 books, including his latest one, Hannah and the Ramadan Gift. He also has a podcast on Sirius XM called The Qasim Rashid Show. And if he's not too busy doing those other things, he manages to fit lawyering for human rights in there somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my guest today, human rights lawyer and author, Qasim Rashid.
Good to be here. Well, welcome. You definitely did your homework because I didn't give you any of that information. So well done.
Welcome and thank you for joining me on this show, Qasim.
It's good to be here, my friend. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. Now, first things first, I gotta ask you. So that picture, the picture I showed of you in the running gear.
Yes.
Do you marathon?
I do. I'm a lifelong marathoner. I ran. That was from the Richmond Half Marathon in 2018. So a little over 4 years ago. It was at the end of 2018. I've run 3 full marathons, a whole bunch of half marathons. I don't know how many 10Ks and 5Ks. I've been a lifelong runner since I was 7 years old. Captain of the high school cross country and track team. Ran in college. I love running. It's the purest and greatest sport, and I will race anyone who disagrees.
Do you run in the winter?
Of course. The old saying goes that when you run in the winter, that's when you get tough. And when spring comes and everything thaws out, those who got tough and as hard as ice stay strong through the summer as well. So you absolutely have to run in the winter. It builds character. And, some of my lifelong dearest friends were made on those Chicago 10-mile, 20-mile runs in sub-zero temperature. So it's a rewarding experience.
That's not for me. No. I haven't seen you actually. This is my first time seeing you since we first met at the what are we calling this? The Nerd Prom, the White House
Nerd Prom sounds good.
Now you're not far, as I understand. You're not far, relatively speaking, from the White House. Have you been back there yet since?
No, I lived in Virginia for some time after law school, but I'm back home in Illinois now. So I'm a couple-hour flight. In fact, even for that Nerd Prom, I flew in from Illinois as well. So no, I've not been back yet. I was invited back for a few other meetings, but I was international for some client work and some other projects I'm involved in. But I'm sure I'll be back around soon enough.
Okay. Now, Chicago is known as the Windy City.
I do know that, yes.
Do you know why it's known as the Windy City?
Yeah, everyone thinks it's because of the wind, and it's not.
Right?
Chicago's not even top 20 windiest. It's due to the political corruption and hot air blowing through the city. That's what it's known for.
That is correct. You are correct.
Right. I know my hometown. I know it inside and out.
I brought that up because I mentioned during my my intro that you have run for office not once but twice. Am I correct?
That's
once
correct,
for state senate once for House of Representatives.
That's correct.
What made you decide to run?
Very simply put, there's a certain point where you realize your advocacy is not enough. I went to law school with the intent of leveraging legal skills to support underrepresented, marginalized communities. It's my wife actually who encouraged me to go to law school for human rights law. And in law school, I worked supporting women who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence. I worked in the Virginia prison systems to support returning citizens, work with homeless shelters, food banks. And there's a certain point you get to where you realize that it's not that advocacy is ineffective. It's very effective. But when there's a broken system, it's sometimes easier to fix the broken system than constantly support one person at a time. Let's prevent the harm from happening in the first place, I guess is the best way to say it. So whereas as an advocate, you can support one person who's marginalized. As a policymaker, you can hopefully prevent the marginalization in the first place. And so looking at some of the systemically broken and unjust policies and realizing that should I be able to win a seat in public office, I can advocate for the people who are being harmed by these policies, because I've been in the trenches for decades. I've seen firsthand the suffering that people have had to go through. That was my motivation. It was, for me, it was a natural progression of human rights law, of fighting for working families to get to a place where we can have more consequential reforms and impact on society to uphold. And for me, the standard has always been uphold justice above all else, above party politics, above national politics, maintain a sense of justice above all else. That's been my driving motivation.
Wow. Wow. So despite the fact that you did not make it into Congress, you are still making a strong positive impact, I guess, in the exact same way that you, or maybe not the exact same way, but that was your intention, right? Was to serve.
I'm trying. Yeah, no, look, I'm trying. There's for me, leadership is more about example than titles. And that's not to say I didn't want to win the seat in Congress. I definitely did. And who knows, at some point in the future, I may run again. But my point is, at the end of the day, if you think your only avenue to serve is by being in some elected position or having some title, then you've kind of missed the point of service altogether. Mm-hmm. And I think that service needs to happen necessarily. That's why I've continued to work in the human rights space. I've continued to support, I don't know how many candidates through my PAC, through personally, knock doors, make phone calls, donate money, raise money, support several human rights initiatives. I think you necessarily have to, right? Muhammad Ali once very beautifully said that service to others is the rent you pay for your time here on earth. And for me, when my time comes, I just want to make sure that my rent's paid up.
Damn, drop it in here. That's beautiful. I came across something very interesting, which I guess would be an example of your paying rent. While you were running, there was one of your constituents that who posted an anti-Islamic content that was directed at you regarding 9/11, and you did your reaction, your way of dealing with this was, I think, what some people would say unusual, surprising. You donated to this guy's GoFundMe for medical expenses.
Right.
Why?
Look, a couple of reasons. We donated and helped raise about $25,000 to pay off his medical bills. A couple of reasons why I did that. One, my faith as a Muslim calls me to uphold justice above all else, and that justice is the lowest form of good. There's kindness and kinship, that every Muslim's obligation is to treat all humanity with the same love and affection as they would their own children, their own siblings. And so for me, that is the ultimate goal. It's not easy, and I'm definitely no saint or perfect example of that, but that's what I strive towards. Two, as a very practical, secular, whether you believe in God or not matter, I believe healthcare is a human right, and every person has the innate right to healthcare access. The fact that in our society, 550,000 Americans a year file for medical bankruptcy, 70,000 Americans a year die waiting for healthcare access. And despite spending twice per capita on private healthcare, Americans have the lowest life expectancy, highest maternal mortality, highest infant mortality of any developed nation. I think it's an outrage. And I think politicians who take money from big pharma, Democrat or Republican, are contributing to that injustice. And so for me, I saw a human being, and by the way, I didn't know he was a constituent at the time. I saw a human being suffering under what I see is a modern day form of indentured servitude, a form of debt for the crime of getting sick. And I thought, look, if I can play a small role in helping him alleviate his suffering, regardless of how he's treating me, then yeah, I'm happy to do that. Because at the end of the day, if the only time you try to support others is because they support you, that's a form of tribalism I don't want to get involved in. Justice calls you to support because it's the right thing to do, not because it's right for you. And so those are the reasons why I did that. I didn't expect it to go viral or make any noise at all. I'm glad people saw an example of how we can serve one another. But that's really what I see it as. And given the opportunity, I'd do it again.
Qasim, that was, in my opinion, exemplary. I mean, I am also Muslim, but I don't have. I'm not there. We try, we try, but I get attacked online so much, and I'm quicker to throw an fu back at somebody than to than to extend a hand and say, hey, let me pay your medical bill, or let me chip in for it.
Well, Majid, the name Majid means noble and glorious and magnificent. And looking at that beard, man, that applies at the very minimum. So you're on the right track, my brother. You're on the right track.
Thank you. Are you still in touch with, that was Oscar Dillon. Are you still in touch with him?
So this is the interesting part of the story, right? Because after all the cameras and lights and everything went away, Oscar actually reverted back to his former self.
Oh.
And so a lot of folks said, see, that's what you get for trying to do the right thing. You shouldn't have helped him. And my response is, had I known, in fact, the very first thing he said to me was, how can I repay you? I said, you can't. There's nothing to repay because I didn't do anything special. I don't want anything from you at all. Like there's no transaction here, right? I did this because it's the right thing to do. And so, somebody asked me if you could have looked in a crystal ball and seen that he would revert to the same, bigoted and Islamophobic and violent threats, would you have reevaluated? And I said, absolutely not. I would have done the exact same thing. Because one, your behavior to do the right thing shouldn't be dependent upon the other person. The Quran has a verse that let not a people's injustice cause you to act anything other than with justice. That's one. And two, Majid, I cannot even count how many thousands, tens of thousands of messages, letters, emails, calls I got from people saying, I used to hate Muslims and think Muslims were evil. You've made me reflect and reevaluate that I have to do better. And so at the end of the day, the net positive that came out of that for our country, for our society, you can't put a price tag on that. And that alone is more than worth it for me.
You are an ambassador for Islam, and I understand. I recall early on when I was learning myself, they said we don't go out to trying to convert people. We kind of lead by example, and people are supposed to look at us and see how we live our lives, and and then they ask, and if they ask, then yeah, we should tell them, but we shouldn't go out of our way to try to convert anybody. That's not the goal.
Look, I couldn't agree with that more. My whole view is, if you need to argue and convince somebody something that your actions don't already, you're doing it wrong. And you need to figure out your own faith first. And if your actions aren't speaking loudly enough, then your words aren't going to make a difference either. So for me, it's all about the action. And that action should be for the sole purpose of service to humanity, not because you're going to convert somebody, not because you're getting some commission, not because you're getting extra God points or extra heaven points. It's because it's the right thing to do. That's the fundamental truth. And I think if we simply do that, if we simply focus on maintaining a sense of dignity for every human being, making sure every person has access to food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, clothing, these 6 things, the rest of life will take care of itself. Then we can argue about religion all you want. But until we figure this out, I can't sit here and, you know, I went through a phase, now just to be very transparent, where I did get into Twitter debates about religion and whatnot. And I got to a point where I realized this is actually pointless. There are people starving in the world right now. There are people dying of cancer, of AIDS, of different diseases. And we're sitting here pontificating what this verse means. Let's lead by example, serve humanity, and let people figure it out based on our example. And so that's been my approach. And that's really, you know, should I be fortunate enough to be elected to office one day, that's going to be my approach. How do we maintain the standard of justice for all people, regardless of faith, color, creed, and ensure that that suffering is taken care of? And if people want to debate religion after that, be my guest. But until then, let's figure out how to stop the human suffering.
Thank you for that. Now I want to switch gears, and I want to talk a little bit about what happened recently. I know you're no longer in Virginia, but this is something that recently happened in Virginia, and you did post a tweet about it that kind of went viral a bit. This was well over 100,000 likes, and your quote here says, "The problem is the bloody guns. I'm only here because my husband is in the military. Otherwise, I would not have chosen to come to this country." Let me just, if you don't mind, I want to play this quick clip for the audience.
Okay, that's the biggest problem in this country. The statistics in the UK for crime is 0 for guns. Why is it so bad? Why is there a 7-year-old with a bloody gun? Come on, think about it. Let's do something. We've got a new governor now. Let's do something. Let's change it. You've got a beautiful country. You've got beautiful people. But what's the problem? Guns. How does a 7-year-old have a gun? That's what I'm pissed off with. I'm only here because my husband's in the military, or otherwise I would not have chosen to come to this country.
Thank you, ma'am.
That I think one of the reasons that went viral is because you can really feel her frustration. You know, and it was worse than what she said. It wasn't even a 7-year-old. It was a 6-year-old, which, you know, it's just, what the hell? What is happening with guns? I'm going to say specifically in Virginia. I know you're not there any longer, but you lived there for some time.
Yeah.
Is there like a gun fetish culture in Virginia? Because there was recently a mass shooting at the Walmart. I don't know if you remember that. There were a bunch of people who were killed there. What's happening in Virginia right now?
What's happening is after Joe Biden won Virginia by 10 points, the honest answer is the Democratic Party did not run a strong race for governor, and that impacted down ballot. We lost a governor for the first time in over a decade. We lost a governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general, which was very painful. And then to add insult to injury, we lost the House as well. We're maintaining the Senate by a 1-seat majority. And what we're talking about is now a state, a commonwealth, that actually the majority of Virginians support common sense gun reform legislation. They genuinely do. The problem is you've got enough Republicans bought and sold by the NRA who are willing to do the bidding of the NRA as opposed to the will of the American people. I tweeted out yesterday, Governor Pritzker in Illinois signed a comprehensive legislation banning assault weapons and creating one of the most comprehensive gun safety pieces of legislation in the country. Same time, Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, promised harsher punishments for people who use guns illegally in response to a 6-year-old using a gun illegally. I mean, just to be that detached from reality, to see a 6-year-old child, a baby, you're a parent, I'm a parent, we've seen our 6-year-old babies before, purely innocent. You cannot hold a 6-year-old accountable. They don't have the wherewithal to understand what the consequences of those actions are. My kid could use a water pistol the exact same way and not know the difference because they're 6. Yeah. To say that the solution is to punish 6-year-olds harsher is just absurd. And it's beyond the pale of human decency. And this is why, Majid, I tell people that anger and rage you feel inside, please don't take it out on Twitter and let that be the end of it. Take it out by knocking doors, by getting to the ballot box, by getting your friends and family to register to vote. Take it out by donating to campaigns, volunteering to campaigns, and make a meaningful difference that way. And take your rage out on Twitter. do both simultaneously. That's how we bring about meaningful, consequential reform for our children.
Now, the teacher, I believe her name is Abby Warner. She's still in the hospital. She's in serious but stable condition. I agree with you. I do not believe they should charge the child because he's a child, but what should happen?
Well, I think the simple answer is understand how he got access to that firearm.
And should they hold the parents?
I think so. Yeah, whoever it was that got him access, whether it was parents or whether it was some other adult, whoever got him access to that firearm should be accountable. And again, people say, well, the solution is we need more cops in schools. What's a cop going to do in that situation? Pop off a 6-year, open up firing in a classroom of 36-year-olds. That's kind of the problem with mass shooters that we're trying to stop. You want to add more to it? I mean, it's nuts to say that having a police officer in every classroom in case a 6-year-old pulls out a gun is a solution. It's nonsense. The solution, one solution that very well could have worked, is safe storage laws. A requirement to keep your firearm locked in a safe and keep your ammunition.
Is that not a thing already?
No, in many states it is. In 9 states it is. In Virginia it is not. In fact, in Virginia, 1 in 4 stolen guns are stolen from people's cars because people will leave their gun in their car with the clip or the handle sticking out as a warning. People will come by, smash the window, take the gun, and take off.
Sure.
And there's no safe storage law requirement. Apparently, according to the NRA cronies, safe storage is a violation of the Second Amendment, which is absurd. And so here's something that's a very common sense, logical way to better restrict firearms from falling into the wrong hands. It won't cost any money. It won't create any kind of burden that's undue. It's a common sense, safe way to do things. But the GOP and the NRA are opposing it. And Majid, you know this already, but for listeners who may not remember, guns are now the leading cause of death for children in America, the leading cause of preventable death for children in America. That should outrage you, especially if you call yourself the pro-life party. Don't our children's lives matter? That's where we are right now. And that's why it's important that we stay active and stop this nonsense.
Your state has actually taken a very big step recently. I'm talking about Illinois. They just, is it yesterday, just signed an assault weapons ban.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel fantastic. A little safer?
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I want to be clear. We're not going to get to a place of meaningful. Let me rephrase that. This is a meaningful piece of legislation, and I want to give credit where due. But we're not going to maximize our true safety unless we have a federal legislation on these firearms, federal security. Because guess what? Guns don't care about borders, and people don't care about state borders. They can cross borders. The vast majority of unauthorized guns in Chicago are from where? Wisconsin and Indiana, right? Yeah. Chicago doesn't have gun stores. You have to go outside the city and bring them in. And this is why we need federal legislation so that we have consistent protection on a nationwide scale. This is why America's gun culture has led to far more gun deaths than every other country on earth. The UK, for example, where this British mother is from, they have less than 1% the gun violence that we do. Less than 1%. And people say, oh, well, the UK has knife crime. Yes. And even their knife crime is less than America's knife crime.
I saw you get into it with somebody about that, and they deleted their tweet.
And they ran away. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And look, here's the icing on the cake, Majid. When you look at the world freedom rankings, the Human Freedom Index that looks at free speech, that looks at low crime, that looks at mobility and accessibility and government transparency, just the overall human experience. The whole argument is, well, guns keep us free, and those countries that ban or restrict guns, they're less free. On the contrary, every developed nation that has common sense gun safety legislation is higher on the Human Freedom Index. Their citizens enjoy a higher degree of freedom of speech, of discussion, of exchange, of movement, of prosperity than the United States of America, of people in the United States of America, because they're following the science. And they recognize that providing legislation that ensures guns don't fall into the hands of violent people doesn't make us less free, it makes us more safe.
That's right. That's right. Indeed. In your opinion, do you think Virginia is better or worse under Glenn Youngkin and his stupid Rick Santorum vest?
I feel like you spoke to my soul with that vest comment. That's so it's far worse. I mean, this is a man who tried to set up a narc line to narc on teachers talking about the reality of racism. This is a man who tried to introduce a new curriculum that, by the way, this was after we went up in education standards because the previous administration's policies were being implemented still for 1 year. He tried to implement a curriculum that completely erased Dr. King from the curriculum, that expanded upon the Confederate white supremacist terrorist generals who tried to destroy our country, that expanded upon European civilization and whitewashed and eliminated African civilizations. You know, it's white supremacy by any other name. So it's by far worse. Our children are worse off. And I look forward to the day when he'll have to be voted out, because in Virginia, you can only run for one term at a time. But I look forward to the day when Democrats retake the governor's mansion in a couple of years in Virginia.
Agreed. Okay, I'm going to switch gears yet again. But before I do, I want to remind those of you who are watching on the replay, if you enjoy what you're seeing, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any content from this fascinating, fabulous channel, Brooklyn Dad Defiant. This is Storytime with BDD. And we're here, if you're just joining us now, we're here with Qasim Rashid, who is a human rights lawyer, an activist, and an author. He's many things. He's a marathoner as well. And right now I want to talk about the House of Representatives. So the drama of choosing a speaker is over. But do you think that the 15 rounds of voting for a House Speaker is indicative of the kind of dysfunction we can expect for the next 2 years?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And I want to remind your viewers that even back in 2017, when Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the White House, there was a government shutdown because they couldn't figure out among themselves. And this is what I tell folks who are politicians who are like, well, we got to appeal to the moderate Republicans and we got to find a way to appeal to them. I'm like, even Republicans can't work with Republicans. How do you expect to work with Republicans? Right? They're telling you that they can't stand each other. Why would they stand you? And my thing is, this is why you lead on values. You lead on the people who you know share your values, and you lead by example. And those who are good-hearted, and I want to be clear, when I ran for Congress, I had plenty of people who said, I'm a MAGA Republican, but I'm voting for you because I see you truly are fighting for working families. And that's where I think we need to brand ourselves, because Republicans, they've already made clear they don't care about working families. They don't care about working with each other. They care about one thing, and that is power by any means necessary. That's great for a dictatorship, not very great for a democratic republic.
Don't forget, they also care about keeping the rich richer.
Absolutely.
As well as they just did. So they've been talking all about this 87,000 IRS agents that don't exist.
Yes.
You know, they're actually crowing about it. It's the same gaslighting thing that they did with the CRT. They made it seem like CRT was a clear and present danger, and they're not even teaching it through K through 12, but they just keep repeating it until it becomes fact to their audience.
This is their only move, right? It was welfare queens back in the 80s, and then it was Willie Horton, and then it was creeping Sharia, and then it was the birther movement, and then it was build that wall, then it was the Muslim ban, then it was the invaders, the refugees, the caravans.
Wow, you remember all of these things.
Oh,
That's impressive.
I do, because I wrote peer-reviewed scholarship analyzing these as well, and breaking down how this is not, bigotry is very unoriginal. You take misinformation, you throw in a little bit of fear, and then you repeat it over and over again, and you try to get your point across. And this is what autocrats and dictators have done since time immemorial. But what they don't do is look at facts. They don't look at an inclusive, broad base. It's very in crowd versus out crowd, and that's what we're seeing right now. With this 87,000 IRS agents coming after you, when none of that is true, and we are seeing record numbers of people who are extraordinarily wealthy get away with not paying taxes at all, over $1 trillion not paying taxes.
And which is they're doing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but they're doing away with that thing. Would cost the American people over 100 something billion dollars.
Yeah. So they're bragging about cutting 80 billion in spending, but the CBO is warning that you're going to lose about 224 billion or whatever. The net loss is going to be 114 billion dollars, increasing the deficit. And again, the Republicans are saying, oh, well, the CBO is incredible. When have they ever been right before? Well, in 2017, when they warned that the Trump GOP tax cut would add 1.9 trillion to the deficit, and it did. In fact, it added a lot more. Their policies added 7.8 trillion to the deficit that was already exploding because of the horrible management of Bush in his 8 years in office. So, this is who they are. This is why I emphasize it's important that the best way to respond to this bigotry and misinformation is facts. It's being active. It's being informed. It's hard work, but it's effective work.
I don't know if you watched Joy Reid last night. She had Byron Donalds on the show. Wow, what's that?
I missed last night.
Okay. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Right, Byron Donalds attempted to gaslight on her show, and he tried to say things like Social Security is going to be insolvent, and then she kept repeating, that's not true, and she had to do it. And I was like, good Lord, like she has patience like you do,
She's amazing.
She was like still professional with him, but I think she had to say that's not true like 20 times, because he was just going to power through with that. And then again, later on, towards the end of her interview, he was talking about CRT. And then again, she had to repeat herself. That's not like, he was saying that it's taught, CRT is taught in K through 12. And she said over and over, it is not.
Well, they can't define CRT in the first place, let alone explain where it's being taught. But look, yeah. I often think, the solution to this, again, it comes back to the local level. It comes back to being involved at the local level and then working your way up from there. And this is one of my frustrations with the Democrats, is that I don't think we're investing as a national party enough in rural parts of the country and investing resources. I'll give you one really good example. I think President Biden did a phenomenal job with the Inflation Reduction Act and providing universal broadband. I mean, this is brilliant, because when I ran, I was in a rural district, and I can't tell you how many people were suffering and struggling due to lack of broadband access. Him providing that and guaranteeing now that we'll have universal broadband is life-changing. Kids can go to school. People can start small businesses. Farmers can get the data they need. Women can get telehealth when they're pregnant and they can't travel. There's so much good that disabled people can get access to healthcare. So much good. If I was the White House, if I was the DNC chair right now, I would be taking up billboards all over the country, mailers all over the country to say, hey, guess what? Democrats provided this. Republicans unanimously voted against it. The next time you're enjoying high-speed internet, just know that we did this for you, and we did it because it's the right thing, and we're going to continue to do it. Stop investing in the Republicans who didn't want this to happen for you.
Yeah. So you may or may not have heard earlier today, the Nassau County in New York City, they came out against George Santos,
I did hear that.
and they said, we don't. He doesn't speak for us. We don't claim him. We don't want him. Nothing to do with him. But Kevin McCarthy, he still is reticent to even discuss anything having to do with George Santos. With that in mind, and the fact that George Santos in the past hour or two tweeted and said that he is not going to resign, that the New York 03, New York's 3rd District elected him, and so he's not going to resign. Why should or shouldn't Americans worry about our government over the next 2 years?
Well, look, I think it's good that we have Biden in the White House and who can block terrible legislation. It's good that we have the majority in the Senate, and that's going to keep the House in check. So in that sense, it's not as dangerous as I think it was maybe leading up to the 2020 election. That said, we're not out of the woods yet. And the affiliation of people like MT Green, who were once a pariah, now have become the leaders of the Republican Party, the undoubted leaders of the Republican Party, is an example of why we can't take this silently, or we can't take this sitting down. We need to double down. We need to double our efforts and make sure that we are voting out extremists like Santos. But then again, and I say this because my standard is justice. We need to vote out Democrats who are taking corporate money and not listening to the will of the people as well. And this is, and I'm telling you, I've knocked thousands and thousands and thousands of doors. And this is one of the things that I heard over and over again. Most voters are not terribly high information voters. They care about the kitchen table issues, but they're not going to go into the nuances of a budget analysis and things like that. They want to know things like, is this politician taking money from corporations and dark money PACs or not? If the answer is yes, they honestly don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, because guess what? 90% of Americans want to do away with Citizens United. And so that's why when I tell folks...
Is that for real?
What's that?
90%?
Yeah. 88%, according to the last poll, 95% of Democrats and like 85% of
why can't we do anything? Why can't we do anything with that kind of percentage?
Because enough politicians on the left and the right take money from corporations that if they know if they stop doing that, they'll have to do something scary, like ask ordinary people for money. And they can't do that. They can't be caught asking people for money, because then people have questions and they have to be accountable to that. And so this is where I think our politics is fundamentally broken, with all the dark money coming in there. And so when you see people like George Santos, coming back to your original point, I see him as the natural result of a political scene that is so engrossed in dark money and corporate money coming in. This whole this whole this cryptocurrency, money being spent. This guy's name, I can't remember his name. What's his name again?
Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah.
So, he gave a ton of money to Democrats, and everyone was like, oh, man, see, this is good. He's giving money to Democrats. Well, he also, through dark PACs, gave money to Republicans and said, I could only do that because I could do it quietly behind the scenes. Now, imagine if Democrats had said, we're not going to take this money because this is corporate PAC money. We're not sure where you got this money from, and we just don't think it's reliable. We're going to stick to the will of the people. Then this whole fiasco would have been on Republicans exclusively, on the George Santoses of the world exclusively. And so I tell folks, make sure justice is your standard. Make sure that, I think the Democratic Party is far and away better than the Republican Party. I'm not even trying to equivocate the two. What I am trying to say is the same way we sit mortified that people like Kevin McCarthy won't hold Santos accountable, that's because they've lost their moral compass altogether. We can't fall down that same path and let our politicians do those same things and say, well, at least they're marginally better. No, we need to uphold justice ourselves. And if we truly want a safe and secure future, we do that by electing people who are truly fighting for working families, so that we don't get people as bought and sold on our side as Republicans have on their side.
Guys, let me just remind you, viewers, right now, this intelligent-looking man across from the screen from me is Qasim Rashid, and on the screen, that's his Twitter account there, at Qasim Rashid. If you're not already following him, make sure you do. It's Qasim Rashid, at Qasim Rashid on Twitter. He's got a lot of brilliant content. And I saw some videos. You posted some like shortly before I met you at the White House. You like did a fantastic video. And I can't remember what it was about, but I'm a fan.
Talking about the one,
TikTok, right?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the one that the difference between Republican-led states and Democratic-led states.
Yeah. That was great. Great. You're on TikTok also.
I am on TikTok as well. Same handle. Well, it's actually Qasim Rashid. It's got a period in between it, but yeah, okay. same one basically. Yep.
Very good. Last question. Nah, I'm going to skip that. I was going to ask you about MTG, but honestly, I don't really care enough about her. There's more important things to be discussing.
Far more.
I want to talk about President Biden's recent trip to the border.
Yes.
Now, after a whole lot of haranguing for the past 2 years, he probably should have visited sooner, but whatever. It's not like he was sitting around golfing or tweeting. He was busy doing shit. President Biden finally went down to the border to see what all the hubbub was about. And, I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go to an area that was, a little bit more hectic. Where he went, at least from the pictures I'd seen, pictures and video, it seemed very sanitized. I don't know. I didn't see lots of random people out in the streets. He was like behind the wall, and at the end of the day, I don't think it mattered where he went, because Republicans would not have given him credit if he went into a crowded homeless shelter, But what do you think his trip to the border accomplished?
Look, I'm not sure, and I say that again as a proud Democrat, somebody who voted for Biden, and when he runs again in 2024, I'm going to vote for him again, because I think he's by far more qualified than any Republican out there. By far, there's no comparison. Right? But again, back to my point about upholding justice as the main standard, and calling out our elected officials when we don't think they uphold justice. This is an example of where I think President Biden and the Democratic Party need to do better. Asylum is a human right. The Title 42 excuse that Donald Trump brought up, just for those who are unfamiliar, this was a provision created in case of individual sickness or any kind of pandemic. It was a provision to ensure that we don't unnecessarily spread disease. It was not a provision used as a blanket ban on all immigration or blanket ban on asylum. That just doesn't exist. There's no existence for that. And I think this apply for asylum in the country you're in and then come here. Just think about how problematic that is, right? If you're in a country where your life is in danger and you're using that country's network to apply for asylum, guess what? There's a decent chance that country's going to find out you're applying for asylum, and then guess what happens, right? You're in trouble. And so I think this is an area where Republican administrations have been far worse, but Democratic administrations just haven't been better enough to create a sense of meaningful immigration reform. And this is not, by the way, a new problem. We're talking, you go far back, the first
80s, right? No.
What's that?
At least the 80s.
No. Well, 1880s, right? I mean, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which is re-upped in 1892 and then 1902, and that expanded to the Asiatic Exclusion League. And then that went to 1924, where the Supreme Court ruled against a Sikh American that you're not really white, and it banned all Asian immigration, period. It wasn't until the 1965 Civil Rights Acts where, due to Black leadership, Asians were allowed to immigrate again. And by the way, when you look at the immigration policies from Europe, the United States effectively had open borders up until through about the 1960s as well. There was no questions about that. Even now, there are 600,000 plus undocumented Canadian and European immigrants in the country right now. So upwards of 600,000 as a conservative estimate. When was the last time you saw Republicans demand to build a wall with Canada or to ban immigration from Europe? I bring that up, not because I'm advocating those things, but to demonstrate the systemic white supremacy within these policies. And so my thought was this, that no matter what President Biden did, he was going to get criticism from Republicans. There's nothing he could do short of resigning that would make them say, yeah, he's doing the right thing. So why not do the right thing and and create a proper investment in immigration resources, get more immigration judges, get more people processing. And by the way, when you apply for asylum, it's not a magical get into America free card. You still have to go through a very detailed process of proving the asylum. There's no such thing as economic asylum. You have to prove specific harm to you for a protected class. And if you can't prove that, then you are deported. Then you are asked to leave the country and made to leave the country. So no one is saying that we should just throw up our hands, let anybody come without any protocol. That would be
Is it a high burden of proof?
It's a very high burden of proof. It's not, and trust me, this is some I've done asylum cases. It's not easy. It's very difficult. And the point is, you don't travel 2,000 miles by foot with an infant in tow because you feel like it, for the fun of it. You do it because your life is in jeopardy and it's in danger. And just I'm passionate about this stuff, but it's like America doesn't learn from our mistakes. Remember, Anne Frank's family tried repeatedly to immigrate to the United States and couldn't. Anne Frank, right? We revere and love for her courage and her commitment to justice. She and her family couldn't immigrate, and we saw the end result of that atrocity, right? The SS St. Louis was a Jewish refugee ship that was turned away by President Truman, and a third of them died in the Holocaust. And so we need to learn from these mistakes of history so that those people don't die in vain, and we can truly say we're becoming a more perfect union. I would love for President Biden to come out and say, here's a pathway to citizenship for people who are DACA recipients. Here is investment. Here's the bill to invest the resources, to streamline our immigration policy, stop the miles and miles and years of backed up policies. I've had clients who've had loved ones apply for immigration the quote unquote right way and die waiting because it was an 8-year, 9-year, 10-year process. There's no reason.
Let me jump in for a minute here. So when you mentioned things like the pathway to citizenship,
yes,
I understand that is going to require a bipartisan. You can't do that unilaterally. It's got to be a bipartisan committee, which will take it will move like a glacier. It will take forever to do. In the meantime, there are very pressing, urgent issues, like when you see the actual bodies of people out there in the cold right now, like just waiting. You mentioned earlier a while ago about the hiring additional immigration judges and lawyers and stuff like that. Is that something that President Biden would have the ability to do? But with the executive order, for instance?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to give the wrong answer to that. But I think that this is where we allow bureaucracy to prevent meaningful justice and progress. In 2013, President Obama put forward an immigration reform package. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. The GOP refused. So then Obama said, okay, fine. You offer an immigration reform package and we'll vote on that. And the GOP refused to offer their immigration reform package. So then Obama signed DACA via executive order and the GOP refused that as well. Then for 4 years, Trump and the GOP were in the White House. For 2 years, they had a trifecta government, and they could have passed an immigration reform package, and they refused to do that as well. And now the GOP is punting to SCOTUS to figure it out. They don't actually want reform. And so my message, my message in response to your point about the bipartisan aspect of it, abolish the filibuster. It's a Jim Crow white supremacist construct designed to prevent civil rights legislation from passing, and pass immigration reform. We had the House, the White House, and the Senate, and we could have done it. Now, I know we had, Manchin and Sinema, who are just, I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to say something on record that I'm going to regret later on.
Say it.
I will just say they're not good people. All right. They don't uphold justice and they're not good people. I'll leave it at that. That's the extent of how far I'll go. But my point is their policies have demonstrably harmed people. And that's why I think electing, Fetterman was just a blessing. It's amazing that we have 51 seats now. Hopefully we expand our Senate majority in 2024 and win back the House and win re-election. And when that happens, I think the answer has to be abolish this reckless filibuster, pass immigration rights, pass voting rights, pass the Equality Act, pass the Equal Rights Amendment, pass repeal Citizens United, codify Roe v. Wade. I mean, there's so much we could do if we simply got rid of this reckless, absurd filibuster that has nothing to do with the Constitution or everything to do with upholding white supremacy.
Can we do away with the filibuster now, or do we need more votes in the Senate?
If we get 50 votes in the Senate, we can do it with the filibuster.
Serious? We got 51. Yeah. The problem is Manchin and Sinema are dead set against it. That takes us down to 49, doesn't it?
If one of them agree to vote to abolish the filibuster, then the tiebreaker goes to Madam Vice President, the MVP, and the filibuster's gone. Look, that's what they do for Supreme Court seats. So it's not, I don't know, that's what they did for the debt ceiling. So it's not the sacred, it's not the sacred core of the American values. If you can abolish the filibuster for the debt ceiling, if you can abolish it for Supreme Court justices, you sure as hell can abolish it for things like voting rights, the Equality Act, immigration rights, and basic human dignity.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Qasim, I think I told you. I told you about this. This is the part of our show where we have the guessing game. This is a favorite of the audience here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an option of one of 3 different categories to choose from. The first one we have is who the Fahizi was that? And this is basically like pictures of well-known politicians when they were teenagers or young adults.
Okay,
yeah?
Go for it.
That's one.
Okay.
2 is name that movie character quote in which I will do a dramatic reading of a well-known character from a well-known movie. Okay. And number 3, we have Seinfeld trivia.
I'm sorry, I got to go Seinfeld trivia on this one. It's tempting to go political, but I mean, that Seinfeld trivia is where it's at.
Dude, I can't tell you how excited I am because, I have been watching Seinfeld, like binge watching it for the past 6 months. I don't know why. It's like there's so many choices. There's so many things to choose from on Netflix. It's like I don't want to commit to something that might be garbage, so I'm going to go with what I know is good.
I can't blame you. That's a good one to go with.
So if you answer correctly, which I believe you will, you get the cowbell. If you answer incorrectly, you'll get.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
You got pressure, no pressure. There we go.
Okay, let's see. Our first question is. Oh, hang on. Our first question is Seinfeld is often described as a show. Oh, God damn it. All right. That's a freebie.
Show about nothing. Anybody knew that. Come on.
Okay. Show about nothing. All right. So that's the freebie there. Let's go to the next one here. What is the name of the coffee shop? What?
Monk's Coffee Shop.
Holy shit. I didn't even finish the question.
I'm telling you.
These might be a little too easy for you then. Let's see. I don't know.
Maybe we'll see.
It was Monk's, which you can see the shadow on the wall there. It's Monk's Cafe. Okay. Who died from licking envelopes?
Susan, George's fiance.
You are on a roll, my friend.
How they make that funny is beyond me, but they did.
Okay, this next one is going to stump you.
All right, let's see.
Which main cast member does not appear in the pilot?
Oh, Elaine.
What the?
Elaine.
All right. How on earth did you know that one? That's a tough one.
It was because they did the pilot and they realized something was missing and they needed to bring in a female voice, and they brought in Louise Dreyfus, and she killed it. And worked up the backstory of how she was an ex-girlfriend, a former girlfriend, and now they're trying to become friends and whatnot. And that was kind of a running theme throughout the entire series. It was great. It was brilliant.
By the way, she is fantastic. Not only in this show, but just pretty much at anything, but especially, I wouldn't say especially in this show. I just rewatch all the things that she does.
I love that they brought her into the Marvel universe. It's great.
Oh yeah. Oh. Okay. Who does Jerry describe as his nemesis and pure evil?
Newman.
All right, these questions clearly.
You gotta go deeper than this, man. You gotta.
All right, let's see if I can stump you on this one. What is Kramer's first name?
Cosmo.
Oh my goodness, you might be on your way to a perfect score, my friend.
Let's go.
Right, let's see.
You gotta stop me eventually, I'm sure.
Yes, that was Cosmo. Okay. What is George Costanza's alias?
Art Vandelay.
God damn.
Latex salesman. Vandelay Industries. Come on.
Okay, it was also the latex thing, but he's also the architect.
Oh, the architect. That's right. Well, yeah. He wants to be
there was that time where he wanted to pretend like he was running a latex thing. Yeah. Holy shit. Okay. Who invented Festivus?
George's father, Frank.
That is correct. The old airing of grievances.
And the feats of strength. Let's not forget the feats of strength.
During surgery, what candy is accidentally dropped into Elaine's boyfriend's open abdomen?
See, now I know you've done your homework, because that was what got me into Junior Mints. So Junior Mints should be playing some kind of feat of Seinfeld. They're delicious. They're refreshing.
Dude. Okay, and this is it. This, I don't want to jinx you, but this last question would make you a perfect 10. Where did George Costanza famously pull out a golf ball from?
A whale's blowhole.
Holy
That's what he gets for convincing his girlfriend he's a marine biologist. A golf ball that Kramer, by the way, hit into the ocean.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, there's only been one other person who had, like, I think, a perfect 10 in this guessing game, and that was John Fugelsang, one of your, I guess, Sirius XM co-workers there.
I'm in good company. I imagine there'll be a statue of me now in front of your house. Right?
Well done. Very well done. I'm very impressed, actually. Well done.
Thank you.
Last but not least, this is the segment of the show called My Favorite Things. There's no right or wrong answer. Intention is to do this rapid fire, just to give people an idea of the things you like, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Favorite TV show to binge watch?
Oh, The Simpsons.
Simpsons. Oh, we got somebody, Star Shumate, saying the sea was angry that day.
Yes. Thank you, Star. That's amazing.
I love that quote. Favorite way to exercise?
Running.
I kind of knew that now. Favorite season for fasting?
For fasting?
Yes.
Oh,
it switches.
Yeah, I know. I've done the whole year, and I gotta say summer, because I feel like there's something about kind of feeling the burn. Look, the goal of fasting is to help you empathize with those struggling. So for me, it's a good
summer is the worst.
Summer is the toughest. You're right.
It's the longest day. The days are long. It's hot.
If you ask me favorite time to make up missed fasts, that's December, when the days are like 9 hours long.
Yeah. True that. Favorite human rights activist.
Favorite human rights activist, living or dead or alive?
Either.
Oh man, there's so many to choose from. I mean, there's Malcolm X, there's Maya Angelou's, James Baldwin. I mean, there's Muhammad Zafarullah Khan. There's too many to name.
Pick one.
I got to go with a man named Muhammad Zafarullah Khan. He was the first president of the World Supreme Court, first president of the UN General Assembly, and he was a fierce advocate for marginalized communities throughout Africa, throughout the Middle East, and he worked with JFK. He worked with multiple presidents, and just look him up. He was knighted by the Queen. Muhammad Zafarullah Khan, just a brilliant mind of the 20th century.
I got to say, I'm really enjoying this conversation with you because I feel like I'm learning like this whole time we've been here.
I appreciate that. Well, the feeling is mutual, man. I appreciate that.
Favorite TV sitcom?
Favorite TV sitcom? I guess, it used to be Simpsons, but animated or like live action?
Live action.
Live action. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess you really can't go wrong with Seinfeld.
Good one. Favorite fast food?
There's a place in Chicago called Portillo's that has the best burgers you'll find anywhere. That's Italian beef you'll find anywhere. But you got to get it with cheddar, hot peppers, and wet.
Next time I'm in Chicago, I will look you up and you can take me there.
I will take you there personally, absolutely.
Favorite American president?
Favorite American president would, I got to go Jimmy Carter.
Ooh, good one. Good one. Favorite decade for music?
90s.
90s.
90s. Everything was great in the 90s. There was no bad music in the 90s. It's phenomenal.
Favorite Twitter account?
Oh, can I say yours and get brownie points?
Aside from mine. Thank you.
There's I love this guy. I've never met him in real life. I want to. Stone Kettle, Jim Wright.
Oh yeah.
Stone Kettle's great. I love his work.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's a good one. Very good. Okay, hoodie or sweater?
Oh, that's a good one. I got to go sweatshirt because when I run, I need to be able to see all around me. So sweatshirt.
Pizza or fried chicken?
Oh God, depends on the place.
Your choice.
Pizza. I'll go pizza.
Elevator or escalator?
Escalator. I like to look around.
Text message or phone call?
Text message. 99 times out of 100. Unless you're my wife or somebody offered me lots of money, send me a text message.
If you could live anywhere on Earth, where would that be?
I'm right where I want to be.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. If you could do any job for one day, what would that job be? And you'd be a pro at it.
Any job for one day, and I'd be a pro at it. A panda handler.
What?
Yeah. Have you seen these videos?
No.
Is to play with pandas, and it looks like baby pandas. It's hilarious. It's great because these pandas are like children, and they're like running away and they're escaping, and you got to stop them. It looks hilarious. I would love to be.
Funny. That's a funny answer. That is like clearly easily one of the most interesting answers I've gotten on that question. Any particular charities or foundations, organizations that are close to your heart or that you support?
Humanity First. I've worked with these folks for 20 years. First time I worked with them was when I went down to Hurricane Katrina and skipped my law school midterm exams to spend 2 weeks down there supporting people who were suffering under Katrina after George Bush's massive debacle. I've traveled Humanity First to Mali, to Guatemala, around the world. They were there supporting Ukraine refugees, and they're just an amazing. More than 90% donated goes to the direct end user. Very minimal expenses on overhead, But and they're in 52 countries. They support women's rights and healthcare and education. It's just brilliant stuff that they do. You can check them out at HF USA on Twitter, or look at my link tree. But yeah, Humanity First is amazing.
Humanity First.
Yep.
It's fantastic. So the audience, by the way, is loving you, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Qasim Rashid. He is the real deal. A solid stand-up guy, is a human rights lawyer and activist. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you here on the show today.
It's good to be in good company, Majid. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much. Now, just sit tight 1 second. I'm going to sign off. I'll see you on the other side.
Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another fun and intriguing episode of Storytime with BDD. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad. And folks, if you have not yet gotten your shot, what are you waiting for? Get that shot. Also, wear a mask. Keep your social distance 6 feet or better. And I will see you guys at the next show. Same place, same time. I love you all. Peace.